Yeah, I agree. I agree about that, though. All right. Hello, everyone. We are now live. Welcome to A New Crusade. Today, I'm going to be talking with TR Sartorial. He is a menswear designer, a Catholic, a political hot take giver, or in general hot take giver, a hunting enthusiast, and a political martyr, I guess, to some extent. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, are we live? We good?
Yes, we're live. We're good.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so how's it going? My name is TR Sartor, founder of TR Sartorial and the Regalia Americana movement. I am a ex. I think a more accurate would be an ex-political prisoner, very brief ex-political prisoner. Uh, I'm the only menswear designer in U.S. history to get a pardon from the president, which is kind of neat.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've been in the menswear world for the last decade or so. It's kind of the only trade I've really been in. I love it. I love what I do, and I love who I do it for.
There you go. Taffy wants to know if your chud drips based on your
Uh,
Twitter
oh,
handle.
oh, jeez. Goodness gracious. Really starting it off, huh?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, all chuds have drip at the end of the day. All chuds drip to a certain extent.
hmm It's just to what extent is the real question, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, there you go. Okay, so I think that when I found you, I think it was pretty recently. You were talking about some of the political stuff. I don't want to start with that though. You and I was really surprised to see that you produce and manufacture your own ties, your own shoes. You're getting into doing suits soon. I really like you sell some secondhand stuff, and so I'm curious if you kind of tell everybody what you offer, and what kind of explain your brand to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started TR Sartorial when I was still living in DC. Because right after I graduated college, I graduated during the COVID lockdown, so I never actually got to walk for my graduation, which is kind of wild to think about. But then I moved to DC on January 2nd, 2021, which was a really colorful time to be moving to DC. And I was going there, hopefully work for like one of the downtown tailor shops, which I did end up working for a couple of them. Obviously, I attended January 6th, and 4 days after I moved in, and stayed under the radar for a few years. But as far as the brand goes, I started that a little later after that, a couple years after. This is going to be the kind of the 2 year anniversary of the brand, and I really started it because I knew I always wanted to make my own stuff. I knew I'd done some accessories and little one-off batches while I was in college of things like boutonnieres. But I knew I really loved working for myself, and I really loved making things for people and kind of bringing, willing something into existence, really. And so I started getting into that. I started playing around with some designs, and when you actually start working in these shops, you realize that it's not, you don't have to have $1 billion operation to start a clothing company. You don't need a few $1 million even to start a clothing company. You really just need to find the right people, know the right things, and have really a vision. And if you do that, you'll find your way. But as far as my design process went, I initially wanted to make suits because that was my whole world. And an employer that I used to work for, he had me in a pretty hard non-compete, which expires in June of 2026. So that's why kind of counting down the days till I can release the suits. I actually have one of the prototypes upstairs, and I might be releasing some images of the prototype on my Patreon. But the initial plan was to do suits and then add accessories and shoes later on. But
Mhm.
because of the non-compete, I had to kind of find a way around and stay in the game. So I started working with accessories and shoes. Obviously, everyone knows me for some pretty impeccable footwear. The ties were actually the first thing I really started releasing, and it was all nature centric. There's the Sunday Best collection, which is a real salute to the Catholic elegance, but the most of the tie designs are all inspired by nature. A lot of time spent in museums and at zoos observing animals and really getting that an appreciation of natural beauty a little bit, but brought to something um, more stylish and contemporary. And then the shoes came. Obviously, everyone's heard of the shoes, and those are still coming. So yeah, no, it took time, and the reason I started off a lot of the times with secondhand was, when I was a young guy coming up, one of the biggest things that young guys, because I see young guys as kind of an investment in the culture in general. And a big thing with the secondhand was I wanted to create a, a, a brand that treated young guys who didn't have a lot of money like a high-end client. And that was why I started doing the restored secondhand stuff, so that there was a place for guys who really wanted to get into style, who really loved it, and maybe their budget's a little tight. Maybe they're just a young guy that hasn't found a great paying job yet. Maybe they've got other priorities, but they want to look good. They want to feel good about themselves. And I wanted to create a brand that felt like a nice quality brand, but for those guys, because those guys deserve to get treated well. If you're a young guy, if you're on a budget, there's no shame in that, and especially if you're making an effort, despite being on a budget, even if the budget's a little tighter, there should be a place for you too. And so there's going to be more restored stuff coming down the pipe. Getting everything moved out here was a bit of a devil, but it's all coming back together right now.
Got it. I remember you saying you moved, or I was reading back on some of your social media stuff. You moved in you had to move in stages with a lot of your stock of stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a real headache of a thing. The funniest thing is I had started packing when the FBI raided me. I was planning on moving, and I had even the trailer out in the yard and everything. I was moving everything, and then one night I go to sleep and I get woken up by a strange phone number, and well, the rest is in the court documents.
There you go. Well, let's get into that, and then we can come back to close, because if not, it's going to keep coming up, I think. So why don't you tell us kind of the story behind how that happened? Obviously, there's some background between you and a pretty famous menswear writer of questionable.
Jared. Oh, we're gonna get in. Oh, it's gonna be fun.
Yes. Yeah, so why don't you?
Yeah. So we'll start. Yeah. So we'll start with the January 6th stuff. So yeah, like I said, I moved to DC on January 2nd, 2021. I was living in Crystal City, which is like right outside of DC. Great little spot, loved it, and I grew up in the South. That's where I'm back now. So there really weren't a lot of people don't think about this. There really weren't a lot of Trump rallies in the South during the 2016-2020 campaign, because the South was always a pretty locked in red vote. So Trump really didn't put a lot of energy into rallies in the South. So that was really my first Trump rally. Like, that was my first time being that close to the big man. And so naturally, I'm going to go. It stopped the steal. The election was stolen. I'm going to go out and make my voice heard. Naturally, I wanted to put a good outfit together. I put on this. It was a Joseph Abboud. It was back when I worked for the Men's Warehouse. I still had a lot of suits from the time I worked at the Men's Warehouse. It was a custom, made-to-measure Joseph Abboud, blue pinstripe, double-breasted suit with a gold knit silk tie from J-Press. From actually the J Press store in DC. I bought it the day before. I always like for big stuff. I like to buy a new accessory like the day before to really shake things up. Burgundy overcoat, a yellow boutonniere in the overcoat, and these tan and houndstooth upper button boots, which are actually from the brand Tap. You can look them up. It was a really short run. They did a button boot. And I had to have it because button boots were so rare, and they're still pretty hard to find. But so that was my outfit. I show up. I know nobody. I know absolutely nobody, and I bump into some America Firsters. I bump into all sorts of cool people. We all link up, and I had just started watching actually Nick around this time. So I was really high energy. I was excited. So I go there, I meet these guys, we're hanging out, and naturally journos are snapping pictures. If you go to a big public event, it's going to happen. And we march down to the Capitol. We're just kind of all walking forward, getting up the steps. There's a little bit of tear gas, a little bit of flashbangs. It's exciting though. Like you have these priests praying the rosary around us. You have all these excited America First. You have all these flags waving everywhere. I mean, it's a surreal thing. I wish I could paint a better picture. And we get up to the top. I did go inside for like a little over a minute. Someone was yelling about a SWAT team down the hallway. I didn't come there to fight a SWAT team. I was not equipped or had the intentions to fight a SWAT team. So I bailed. I grabbed a couple other America First guys that were there with flags. I grabbed them and I pulled them out with me. And there were some guys outside, like shaming people if they weren't going inside. I don't know what that was about, but then we all kind of disperse and go home eventually. And then like a month later, because genius can't be deterred, I went to AppPack 2 wearing the same suit too, wearing kind of daring him to catch me. Uh, in the Louis Theroux documentary that was made about AppPack 2, there's some shots of me in there, and I am wearing the same suit I wore on J6. But and what was nuts is it took him 3.5 years to find me, which I really, I was always very ostentatious. I was very public. I was streaming. I was talking about a lot of things. I even kind of hinted on some streams that I might have been there, kind of
Hmm.
sarcastically. But it took him 3.5 years to find me,
Hmm.
and then uh, I find out that this guy. We'll get into this guy Derek Dye Workwear, very famous Twitter menswear blogger. It turns out he was assisting the FBI in identifying me because I had disagreed with him on a post. I forget what the post was. Something about men wearing dresses and how he said men can style a dress and look good and clothing has no gender. Some kind of retarded nonsense like that.
Hmm.
And I disagree with him on this. He blocks me, but it turns out this is him blocking me because I'm having a sensible thought as a man saying you can't wear a dress. That's not enough for him to block me. He starts going through pictures of me and pictures of the J6ers, and he puts together, I guess, like a packet and assists the FBI in identifying me based on my outfit, based on some posts. There was a previous outfit post that I had with the same boots on. It was the boots that really felled me. This is why it's important to have impeccable drip, but if you are going to go to the second Boston Tea Party, maybe you dress a little more anonymity, a little more conservatively. but
Yeah.
um but yeah, it was primarily through the boots that he helped identify me, and he bragged about it. That was the nutty part. This guy, this sicko, he blocked me, and that's one of the things I really despise is when people want to like talk trash or they want to, backbite and jab and needle and do all this other stuff, and they won't even at. They won't even at who they're talking about. Like if you're gonna throw that, at least at the
Hmm.
person you're talking about. Don't block them and have your little like snide backbitey, uh, thing. It's very feminine. It's very unpleasant. But so he did this and he's bragging about it. And then, more recently, we found out this guy's an illegal immigrant who's openly talked about being an illegal immigrant. So granted, I think nothing ever happens. Gang might be vindicated, but I'm still waiting on his deportation and him posting all this pro illegal immigrant stuff. Like, just like, can we just throw this guy back to Vietnam? Can we just,
Yeah.
like, he can work in a textile mill. He can do his little blog on the side, when he's sleeping on the floor in the sweatshop. And then, he can actually, I'll, my suit factory is going to be based out of Hong Kong. So, I'll ship him to Hong Kong. He can work on my suits. He can tell me what he thinks. He can give me his opinion as he's like weaving my textiles.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's really funny to realize. So I've known about Derek Guy for years, especially in like the serious menswear realm. He's like a pretty big deal as like a writer, and everyone really likes him. And most of my time in menswear and all that kind of stuff has been mostly in like the like heritage, more like vintage reproduction, casual type of stuff. So and there it's weirdly, for people who want to dress like people from the 1940s, it's weirdly just a bunch of like middle of the road liberal white guys, like 35-year-old dad liberal white guys, and it's pretty lame.
A lot of very unproblematic people, very soft, overly socialized. People consider themselves like eccentrics. I mean, it is considerably eccentric to dress, you know, oriented to a different era, sure. But a lot of the guys are very like they're still like barcade guys. Like they're still like IPA barcade guys. And
Yeah.
if you and they love that what's that vintage style, not vintage values.
Hmm.
They love I swear they get chills every time they say it. They feel so good saying it. They feel so noble and altruistic.
Hmm.
But the odd thing about it, the whole idea of like vintage style, not vintage values really doesn't make any sense because the stuff you like, the fruit that you're enjoying, came from a tree that had certain values. That was a
Mhm.
non-secular Christian world that had a certain set of norms and an objective stance on what beauty was and what beauty wasn't. I don't think you can separate those two things. I don't think you can have this classical masculine elegance and also, have this liberal, like this kind of warm, lukewarm liberal sensibility, this kind of agreeableness. Because the kind of men I wouldn't say you're even emulating directly, but the styles that define their culture that you enjoy so much that they also clearly appreciated are attached to a set of values. They are attached to a set of values that these kind of guys would consider, problematic.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely weird. They kind of you see it, especially there is a certain elitism to like formal menswear, which I actually think is somewhat healthy to a certain extent, as far as like a certain level of gatekeeping is good. Like you were saying, when a guy who's maybe not rich can't get into it, that's kind of like that sucks. But as far as like people taking themselves seriously, that's there. But you see, especially in the workwear and all that kind of realm, it's a lot of like office dwellers and wearing like $600 work boots to the office every single
Yeah.
day. And and there is a weird one of the good things about nice clothes is that there is an appreciation for the people who make them and trying to have good working conditions and all of that stuff. But then a lot of that gets turned into a weird liberal virtue signal type of thing, and it's not really in a way that's natural. I don't know. There's you could really, I mean, you could probably write a book on how weird all of the politics of men's clothing is.
There's a lot of weirdos out there. There was a particular freak. He's still out there. He was in Vanity Fair a long time ago, and he still reposts it like a guy that won the football game in high school. This guy Zachary Pincent Tailoring. He's like kind of 1700s, um, era dresser. The Beau Brummel looking guy. You know who I'm talking about? You ever seen pictures of this guy?
I'm sure I've seen him, but the name doesn't ring a bell.
Uh, yeah, he had a real heyday. He's real popular in the whole vintage like reproduction world. He does, like I said, more like early 1800s kind of stuff. But he's really popular in the whole vintage menswear world. He had a lot of credibility for a while. I don't even know if I'm not even really in the world anymore. I'm kind of in my own thing. So I don't know how relevant he is anymore.
Hmm.
But I exposed him a while back, and a lot of the menswear community got upset with me at this because that's back when I was still doing the vintage style, vintage values kind of movement, and he got very upset because it turns out this guy was a former on-screen prostitute. Some people call them porn stars, but it turns out that was how he made his bones, pun intended. But yeah, and when he got exposed for that, that was during the COVID time. I was a little persona non grata especially from the vintage menswear world. I was a regular pariah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate to see that kind of stuff being there. Yeah, there is something weird, like you're saying. It does attract a certain type of eccentric person, and I think making it more approachable, especially and getting just telling more guys no, you need to dress well, will get more normal eccentric or more guys like us, I guess, into it. But as of right now, it is a type of thing, kind of like how people will just dress like freaks. I think that they see that as a different way to do it. I'm gonna go dress like I'm from the Regency instead of dressing like a, I don't know, like some other type of weirdo, I guess. So there is definitely that there. I can see what you're talking about there.
Yeah, it's definitely, as far as especially like historical dedication, because I think embracing classic style and dressing vintage are kind of two different. They're related and there's a lot of crossover. I do
Hmm.
think it's two different schools of thought. I do think the
Hmm.
people that want to like distinctly dress vintage, um, they are kind of their own group. You really do have a really stark divide of like historians and like liberals who haven't found their weird thing yet, and that they're going to make
Hmm.
that their weird thing that they're going to have, because even having preferred pronouns isn't particularly eccentric anymore. For a little bit there, it was just putting they in your bio, and all of a sudden you're the local eccentric. But now, you got to try even harder. So I think you do attract, like, oddly enough, two very different ends of the spectrum when it comes to distinctly vintage inspired. I think as far as the classics go, I think dressing with a sense of classical elegance kind of involves combining elements of different eras, combining different timeless things. Um, not really leveling on historical accuracy, but more personal expression in a
Hmm.
timeless way.
Yeah.
So I do think they are kind of two. They're similar, but they're different. You know what I mean?
In practice, I think they can often be very similar, but in mindset, it is definitely different, and yeah, I get what you're saying. For me, it's really, there are just a few specific things that are in a specific era or time frame that I really, really like that, if I'm not buying like a reproduction or something really specific, it's hard to find, like a high rise and a wide leg. Oftentimes like pleats are
Yeah.
ideal, that kind of stuff, a wide lapel, like especially with suits and stuff. It's hard to not,
Yeah.
it's hard to kind of root through that. And all of those are classical style pieces or parts of, more vintage styles. But yeah, they can be done in a way that's not explicitly vintage. I think, I don't know if you had mentioned him, maybe you had, the gentleman Ask Oki. He's like the giant black guy.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I love him, dude. His outfits are impeccable. The tailoring is great. He's got that
mhm.
guy, that old British guy, kind of looks like oh shoot, what was the director that died recently?
Oh, David Lynch.
David Lynch. He looks a lot like
Yeah.
David Lynch, and he looks a little bit
Yeah.
like Ian Smith, like Rhodesia
Yeah.
Ian Smith a little bit. Um, and those two guys, they always look really nice. They always look really good. They offer a lot of good information
Hmm.
that has a bit of personality to it. And I do the prof's personality is a lot of fun. And like I said,
Yeah.
his styles are very on point. I
Hmm.
use his examples a lot, especially I've got some young guys who are just a few years younger than me who are starting to want to dress up, and they're so hooked on the tight suit and the tapered pants thing, and it's just like you want to shake them, but it's like, oh, I know why you like it, I know why you like it, but you're wrong.
Hmm.
And I gotta, you gotta play nice a little bit, but you're also like, oh, you're so wrong. But I like to
Yeah.
use Skokie as a great example of, no, this is, and because a lot of guys write off, these more classic things, taking the whole cut pants, for example, um, as a one of these things these guys will like write off as old timey, which I really
Mhm.
do not like the term old timey because it almost feels like a pejorative. I don't want to call it a slur, but it does feel kind of like a pejorative of anything that isn't trending at the moment. But what's kind of neat is because these looser fits are starting to trend now. Are you still going to call it old timey? Because I mean the whole cuts are back.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of guys still write that off. We're kind of in this transitionary period between trends because a lot of guys are still holding on to my tight tailored pants, and
Yeah.
also I think part of it is because there's a lot of guys who are finding out that you can't let those out. You can't
Mhm.
actually make a whole cut out of a crop pant.
Yeah, definitely. Jim says we made farmers markets based. We're coming for clothes, and I actually do think that that's somewhat of a good mindset to kind of look at how organic food and farmers markets and all that stuff stopped being gay hippie stuff and started becoming cool. And clothes to a certain extent are good. One of the issues is that in a way that you don't have to fight for all that healthy food, all that kind of stuff. You really have to fight. Most men seriously deal with like laziness and sloth, and you really see that in the way that they carry themselves and groom themselves and the clothes they wear. And it's a lot easier for people to justify, I think, to themselves eating healthier than it is for them to justify, spending money on clothes. And this, a lot of idiots think it's gay, or a lot of guys will go and they'll work in the trades, and if you look different, and then you just get ridiculed and stuff. So it's a lot more complicated, but I do think that's a good framework to use, at least.
Well, it is, and that's a great point that you raise. Especially because clothing is such a part of a sense of self-expression that it is hard for guys to envision themselves express. A lot of guys really are cemented in the idea of looking like you don't care. And that's all you need to know about clothes is you shouldn't try too hard with it. and any fashion advice they hear is don't try too hard. And they take that, doesn't mean that your outfit looks is it's they're when those guys say that in these instructionals that they're watching, they're talking about sprezzatura, they're talking about this kind of effortless elegance. A lot
Hmm.
of guys take that and they just hear effortless. They don't want to look like they put something together. And the key isn't looking like you put something together. The key is still looking good. And there is a line to walk between that, you know. And a lot of guys don't want to, like you said, there's a lot of sloth there. They don't want to appear like they put effort in, and they certainly don't want to actually put effort in either. You know,
Yeah.
they they really love the kind of carelessness. They love being able to just kind of, get out of bed and walk right out of the house in
Hmm.
whatever, because it's so comfortable, it's so efficient, it saves me time. And because I've heard a lot of guys try to defend the laziness with, oh well, it's saving me time. It's like, what are you, like a rocket scientist? Are you like some crazy like high powered executive that, like, oh man, I can't put like regular clothes on, that's saving me 5.8 minutes, and that's going to make share prices go down or something? Like, no, you have the time, you're just lazy and you don't care. I mean, it's it can be a headache to get into guys, but they once you get it into them, they tend to stay pretty locked in.
Yeah. Yeah. Jim elaborated. He said normies think trying is gay, which is true. You know,
This is very true. You'll see that a lot.
and it's unfortunate because I think a lot of guys do understand in trying, like they understand trying. Like you'll see, there's no one is dressed worse than like a Corvette owner. A Corvette owner
Yeah,
shows up
that
somewhere, he's
that,
wearing
that is true.
he's wearing cargo shorts with a Corvette or a Chevy T-shirt and a Chevy hat and like driving shoes or Skechers, and he has a perfectly clean, perfectly washed Corvette, and you're like, so you understand what it means to take care of something. You understand what it means to try. You just don't
But you're telling
try.
me that it's like a locked like article in your life. Like you pull this beautiful car into your garage and you sit down in it and you don't see like yourself and go, I should match this vehicle. That's like a part of my personality. I should match the look and feel. Everything in my life should kind of have a similar look and feel and level of effort.
Yeah.
And that was always a mental block I never understood. And
Hmm.
I think it can easily be the other way. I've seen a lot of guys who dress very well, whose cars are just kind of like, regular, just average cars, but they dress very well. So it's an interesting juxtaposition. I
Hmm.
recently wrote an article kind of declaring war on the white sneaker as a nice shoe, because there's few things I'm really tired of hearing, because I've worked in the retail world for a long time, so I've heard many a horror. And one of the most common things that's always made me want to throw up is this idea that a all white sneaker, like a running shoe,
Hmm.
is a nice shoe that you can wear with like your Sunday clothes. Like the amount of guys I see at mass with like navy blazers, these stretchy, painted on khakis, and white like on clouds, or like white, Skechers or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, this is almost like the intention's there. Like, they put a blazer on, they have a collared shirt and a tie on. Like, the intention is there.
Hmm.
There's clearly a good intention here, but it's just eviscerated
Yeah.
by treating a white running shoe. It's a white running shoe. It's a running shoe for the summertime and the springtime, you know, and which it's great for that. It should
Hmm.
stay in the gym. It should stay when you're walking up and down the street, getting your miles in or whatever. It is not a nice shoe.
Hmm.
At the very least, if you're going to do a blazer and khakis, just get a pair of freaking loafers, man. Get a pair of just burgundy penny loafers. There's a trillion of them at every thrift store in America. Go get a pair. Or better yet, get a pair of, crocodile skin burgundy Gustavs from TR Sartorial.com.
Yeah. There you
But,
go.
but,
I
uh,
wouldn't I wouldn't even
but
cry if you were wearing something technically too informal, like boat shoes or something that are technically too informal for
but
church. But like at least like they're leather and they have a sole and you
there's
know.
almost an element of classical school of thought there. Like, there's like, it's a part of the classic family. Like, the
Mhm.
boat shoe is a little bit more kind of the frat brother of the classic bro fam, or classic shoe family. but
Mhm.
it's there in the family, like and it's not even like a leather, like one of these fashion sneakers. It's not even like a leather, like a white leather sneaker,
Mhm.
which I don't hate. They have a particular purpose. And they're not formal. Don't let this be mistaken as me saying those white leather sneakers you got are formal either. But it's these white canvas shoes with, the special sole. Like, unless you're like a 90-year-old man with like debilitating pain when you walk, if you have knee problems, if you have ankle problems, you have back problems, and you need that special supportive sole to walk, all
Mhm.
right, man, I'm not gonna give you a hard time, all right? But most of those guys will suffer through it in a pair of regular dress shoes when they go to church.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
oh, it's and when you see like guys in like their 20s, and I almost feel bad because you can tell they think they look really good, and you don't want to be discouraging. You don't want to be mean because you want to
Mhm.
encourage these guys to do better, but you don't want to be cruel either. But
Yeah.
also, like, what you're doing is also incorrect. Like, you are
Mhm.
misled if you think that's, and so many guys are so focused. The suit is very important. The jacket fit, the pants fit, the shirt fit. These are all very important things. But so many guys I see will get a really nice suit. They'll buy their first nice suit, and they'll still be wearing like a pair of like Shoe Carnival back to school specials.
Mhm.
And you got to the footwear is a big part of the soul and personality of an outfit. It does dictate a lot of demeanor. It says more than you think.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I guess one thing we kind of get into, you said it's incorrect, which I guess is something that from a lot of people's perspectives is something you're not allowed to say. And then from people who aren't into clothes, they would basically say, "Who are you to tell me that?" However, with a lot of artistic fields, there are certain fields where there are some things like whatever. If you want to go be Jackson Pollock and just throw paint at a palette, you can do that if you're painting, right? But with architecture, with clothes, with car design, stuff like that, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong to a certain extent. As far as there are rules that exist for a reason. This guy, Cars and Catholicism, he's one of my friends. He says his daily is an old Porsche 911. The Porsche is the 911, in my opinion, is like one of, if not the most beautiful cars ever made. And it's for a
It's
reason.
very iconic.
There are rules that car follows. Anytime you see a guy who is well dressed in a movie or a show, he's usually following the rules of style, or he knows enough about them to break them correctly. So yeah, maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, as far as rule breaking and rule bending goes, you do kind of have to master it. And like I said, back to the incorrect, so we were kind of talking a little bit about Gentleman's Gazette
Mm-hmm.
earlier. There's a really great article on my website actually. I think it's probably a year old now, but it's kind of the life cycle of a menswear enthusiast or a guy dressing up.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a stage you kind of reach where, it's like the second or third stage in the life cycle
Mm-hmm.
where you get really knowledgeable about the rules. And you kind of become a bit of a fashion police officer to everybody around you because you're
Mm-hmm.
so obsessed with the rules. And a big part of kind of the mental graduation beyond that is mastering those rules and mastering good taste. And rules and taste, while there's a bit of overlap, they're not completely the same.
Mm-hmm.
Taste is being able to bend those rules or break those, even deliberately break those rules for the sake of personal expression. The problem is a lot of people aren't taught the rules. A lot of people don't spend that time kind of going through the fashion police stage, the real rule oriented
Mm-hmm.
stage. So you really don't. You have kind of almost underdeveloped expression because I think proper expression really comes from understanding the rules and then knowing when and where to break them at your discretion.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like I almost liken it to like military training. If you're like a lower enlisted guy, you're learning all the proper tactics, you're doing everything by the book. But if you're out there as like special forces or a mercenary or something like that, you have discretion. You're an expert. You will, break these rules and bend these rules and do what you need to do to get the job done. And that kind of goes with any level of skill. If you meet any skilled tradesman, any skilled craftsman, anybody who really knows their stuff in their field, you know, if you're like learning all the rules textbook, they will kind of have a chuckle at you because they've also learned all the rules, but they also know when and where to break them, and they're going to do
Hmm.
things that seem unorthodox, and that's a big part of that kind of style life cycle. But the
Hmm.
problem is a lot of these people are fundamentally underdeveloped because they didn't go through that age of rules, and that's kind of one of the problems with this very liberal idea of art is this idea that there are no guardrails, there are no boundaries, all things are beautiful, all things are good. You know, the problem with that is like the energy kind of goes everywhere. Like creativity is very much like energy. If it has no conduit, if it has no direction, if it has no boundaries, it's
Hmm.
kind of useless. It's just kind of sitting there in the air.
Hmm.
So creativity, and this is one of the reasons that the eras we appreciate are so beautiful, is that there were social norms, there were rules, there were understandings governing that creativity that gave it rules. And this is one of the things that's so appealing to men about classic menswear is there are these rules. There are dictates of formality. There are
Hmm.
different styles that are acceptable for different events. And it does help narrow down your options. It keeps you from this kind of choice paralysis that a lot of people have now where they can just do anything. So they do
Hmm.
nothing.
Yeah.
So, with classic menswear, it's one of the real beauties of it. It's one of the things that attracted it to me as a young man was the rule-oriented nature of, okay, this means this level of formality. Peak lapels are more formal than not. Shawl lapels are only for tuxedos. Little things like that are really, really, satisfying for men to learn because then they have this skill, they have this knowledge, and they can use it to express themselves while still maintaining these timeless levels of decorum.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was something, my friend was married last spring, and his wedding, he set the formality at black tie because he knew that people know that black tie means dress up, not because he expected anyone to wear a tuxedo. And
I've
and
seen that. I've seen that.
and so funnel so we're going there, and I was like, oh awesome, he's gonna have us rent tuxes, like it'll look better than just renting suits. And we're going forward, and then he sends me the suits, and they're not tuxes to rent. And I was like, oh bummer, okay, whatever. And then we get there, and there was people who showed up to his wedding where the invitation on it said black tie, wearing polo shirts, jeans. There was a
Bruh.
lady wearing like a black sundress with rubber sole work cowboy boots, like the kind that would have like the American flag on the shaft, when they were
Oh,
just
bruh. Oh,
yeah.
oh. Why? And see, this is the problem. And the thing is, like, you don't want to be mean to any of these people because they just don't know, right?
Hmm.
It's more of a statement on the culture that we've kind of reached this like veneration. This is gonna sound mean, but it's like a veneration of peasantry.
Hmm.
Like there is kind of a veneration of also not knowing the dress code, like not knowing what a dress code means, not being stylish. There's a kind of veneration of being like, well, I'm not fancy like that. I got a polo shirt for my fancy stuff, and that's my, is that good? Like, is that like if you actually like, and I know a lot of blue collar guys. I know a lot of blue collar guys that love dressing up, like welders. They weld during the day, but if you ask them to show up to something, they'll show up in something that would that'll make Alan Flusser blush. I mean, they're good. They're you can have both things. You can be a skilled, hardworking guy and also be elegant and stylish. And I think there's a lot of guys that have like this mental block between that. Like they think that's two totally separate like archetypes. Like they think you're either a stylish, elegant, dignified person or you're a
Hmm.
hard, rough and tough guy, but you got a heart of
Hmm.
gold or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
you can take the best of both worlds with that. You can be a bit of a polymath. You can specialization is kind of for insects, but yeah, I see that kind of stuff all the time. And like so the whole black tie just meaning like fancy, which is another word that just kind of like when I hear it in the wrong context, it makes me want to throw up because
Yeah.
it's so nebulous and like I'll put on, I'll wear this. I've got a pair of old like Ralph Lauren khakis on right now, and if I tuck this in, like all of a sudden that's fancy, and like
Hmm.
this is the only. I would have worn something a little more elegant, but it's like 98 degrees and so much humidity and ugh, swimming here. But
Yeah. That's fair.
but yeah, like the broadness of the term fancy, this kind of Also, there's a lot of guys, especially back in the day when I was working for the Men's Warehouse. The rental uh, clothing game was nuts. It's actually probably I would consider one of my first red pills was seeing the prototypical wife guys who really had no interest in any say of their wedding. Like their brides would come in and just like show me their Pinterest board and show me all the stuff, and the guys was like, I don't care. I'm not real fancy. I've never worn a suit before, but yeah, just do whatever you want, babe. It's like this is your wedding, dude. Like this is your life. Like just
Mm-hmm.
no interest in having command over your life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you got to be an expert, but there should be something innate that you want. Like, you're spending, they were, and they would literally laugh about it, about how they're spending a few $1,000s on her dress, but they're renting the groom's suit, and he's never had a suit before.
Yeah.
Like that's, if anything, like when does a bride ever rewear her wedding dress? Ever. It
Mm-hmm.
never happens. If anything should be rented, honestly, it should be bride's dresses, especially the way a lot of these brides are now. The kind of women that are getting married now, those rental dresses are pretty symbolic, had having had numerous people in them, you know.
Yeah.
But if anything should be rented for a wedding, it should be these brides' dresses because a lot of them are uninspired, a lot of them are unoriginal. They just
Mm-hmm.
want this big white dress. Well, a man's suit, especially if you're actually going to wear a suit for your wedding and not, say, morning dress or a tuxedo, depending on, time of day or whatever you want to do. If anything, if you're wearing a suit for your wedding, that
Mm-hmm.
should be a bespoke or at least custom made to measure suit. Like that should be something that's yours as a man. There are a few things that were more heartbreaking than seeing so many guys who just didn't care whatever they wore, you know. And it was always the same thing too. It was always the blue, like the medium blue suit, red tie, white shirt, every single time. Like no originality. And there's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing like right about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of harmless.
One thing a lot of guys don't realize too, especially from I hate when I see it in weddings, is that women have a terrible standard for what a guy is supposed to look like in clothes in general, and they're even worse at understanding what men are supposed to look like in dress clothes. If your wife says, "Wow, that suit looks great on you," she just sees a suit and goes, "Wow, a suit," and you might look terrible in it, but
Well,
that is
especially because she's probably
for her.
never seen him in a suit before.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't know what a suit is supposed to fit like most women, they see that skinny sprayed on suit where like if you were to put your phone in your pocket, you'd see the bulge in your pants, right?
I'd be able to tell the
The
exact model of phone you have. Yeah.
Yeah, the 1 inch lapel with the skinny flower tie. And like one of the things I've been seeing a lot recently is that they'll do the polyester satin, but they'll do the whole thing the same color. So like I saw one guy recently in a champagne colored tan suit with a champagne polyester satin tie and a white shirt, and then all of the guys were matching. I'm like, you look like you're all going to prom together. Like you're marrying your wife and you're wearing the thing that like teenagers wear to go to prom. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
you're fumbling the bag so hard.
Dude, I remember the amount of weddings, and I almost felt like a doctor like assisting in suicide sometimes, like because I would have these people come in and they wanted to do like tan suits with teal vests and matching
Yeah.
fabric vest and tie sets with like a tan suit, and I'm just like, I mean, look. It's a day job. I can't get too invested in it, but also like I love it. That's why it's one of the reasons I couldn't keep working there was just like I like this too much to work here. You know what I mean? I need to be in a place where I can create the stuff that I want to create.
Yeah.
I can see what's going on, and then I can also kind of push the boundaries and do new things.
Yeah.
Because that's one of these things that um, you know is one of the biggest issues I have with a lot of the kind of mainstream menswear community. It is getting better. I'm going to get into why what I've seen is getting better.
Mhm.
Um,
You
I saw
saw
that comment. It
that.
was funny, but the just the the carelessness and the lack of imagination.
Mhm.
When I was doing all these weddings, like I said, it was all the same thing. There was nothing wrong with it, but there was nothing right about it.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that should be really defining to male elegance, to classical masculine elegance, is a
Mhm.
bit of defiance, a bit of, boldness. You know, this whole idea of being like an unproblematic golden retriever man that all these psychotic women now want is this kind of unthreateningness, this unindividuality. Like men are basically accessories to women. And that's the way I saw these brides treat their grooms when they were getting them fitted. And they bring all the groomsmen in, and the grooms would be sitting there, you know, joshing around with each other, acting like middle schoolers.
Hmm.
And it's like, you guys are like all like around 30, you know, and you're telling me you've never worn a suit before.
Hmm.
You've never thought about, you know, your style, sense of style before. Granted, I've been in this world for a long time. I'm very passionate about this world. So maybe my point of view is a little skewed here. But you're telling me you've never even watched like a movie and thought, man, what would I look like in a suit? You know?
Hmm.
Even I've had some guys that got inspired by movies, you know, John Wick, Kingsman, stuff like that. And that caused them to kind of have a little bit of an awakening as far as style goes,
Yeah.
and a bit of curiosity as far as like, well, what does my personal style look like? Would I wear that thing? But then that creates a whole nother slew of problems. The Oxford's Not Brogues phenomenon, which started from Kingsman, where guys will see a movie that involves and references some classical style, and they think that's all they ever need to know. And
Hmm.
you'll have guys come in and say Oxford's Not Brogues, and they have no idea what they're saying. They just think it makes them sound cultured. And I'm like, you have no idea what an Oxford is or what a brogue is. You know, Oxfords can have broguing.
Can be
In fact,
brogan.
that's one of
Yeah,
my
can be
favorite shoe
brogue.
designs
Yeah.
because it's such a nice mix of formal and
Yeah.
casual. Is an Oxford with broguing. That's just a traditional wingtip, like,
Hmm.
which is kind of a, you know, that's
Yeah.
kind of a whole nother thing. I'd rather have that problem than somebody who doesn't care at all, though.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you
You
see the
know,
same thing with guys who watched like you saw it more back in the day, right? When Fury had come out and when Peaky Blinders had first come out, and
oh, everyone
every
got
dude
that
had the
haircut.
Fury
Every
haircut,
cornball
and
got
then
that
every dude,
haircut, bro.
yeah, had the Peaky
And what
Blinders
was nuts is it started getting so everyone started trying to do it more and more dramatically to the point where guys
haircut.
basically just had mohawks. They just
Yeah,
had like slightly wide mohawks.
yeah,
Um, the one that did it best was the one that got so underappreciated. It's one of the reasons I'm glad the show didn't get kind of the meme appreciation that those ones did. Boardwalk Empire is a great style inspo. If you haven't watched it, it's 5 seasons on HBO. It's fantastic. It's some of Scorsese's best work. If you like Casino, you like Goodfellas. Just imagine, like if I like to put it for a lot of normies, like if Scorsese wrote Gatsby, you know,
mhm,
if you let Scorsese create something in the Gatsby era, but you know, without all the hip hop music and all the silliness. But
yeah. The
but
suits
Jimmy
in that,
Darmody in that one had that same haircut.
right? Yeah. There's a lot of really good since I like clothes so much, for me, costuming like makes or breaks movies. And I remember I was watching have you ever watched the show The Marvelous Mrs Maisel?
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched
Yeah, it's about a female Jewish comedian, so watch it if you want, don't watch it if you want. I won't judge you.
it.
That's a spurious topic.
I'll
But
try my best. I'll see how long I can hold out.
But one of the things I really appreciated was in the costuming, and I was explaining it to my fiance, and she really didn't notice it or couldn't even really see it. But they have it's her husband and then her dad, and the dad is a professor at Columbia, and so he's wearing brown tweed suits. He's wearing a fedora. It takes place in the late 50s, early 60s. And then the husband is a businessman, and he's wearing like a shark skin gray suit. And I'm explaining to her, I'm like, they're characterizing them through the clothes they're wearing, and like you can tell by his suit he's a professor. You don't even have to watch the show. You could just see that. And she's like, I don't know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Like that doesn't mean
It's the
anything.
it's the art of the demeanor. It really is, and this is one of the things that's really lost, especially these days. You know, a lot of guys they think about style so clinically and
Mhm.
academically, and there's so much about it that is, you know, we kind of call it aura now, but it's things you can't consciously point to. I mean, I can because I'm obsessed with this stuff, but a lot of
Mhm.
people can't point to when they see an outfit that generates like a vibe. It generates an aura. And a
Mhm.
lot of guys don't appreciate that classic style does that better than anything because all the rules had purpose. You know,
Mhm.
if you're wearing a country tweed suit, it says that, you know, this is a function suit. This is a suit you wear every day. This is a suit you wear effortlessly because it's functional, it has patch pockets or it has a belted back. You know, it's a function everyday wear suit. And you wouldn't necessarily think that directly unless you're crazy autistic about the stuff like I am.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, you see a guy wearing that kind of suit and you know he carries himself elegantly. He's probably not super formal, because
Hmm.
probably in like an earth tone, brown, green, something like that. You don't see that kind of suit and think a businessman, but you do
Hmm.
know that's a person with a head on their shoulders, a person that puts themselves together well. They're
Yeah.
polished, but they're not a business person, which is kind of the that kind of professorial look versus say someone's wearing, even people who don't know anything about style. If you showed them a guy in a brown tweed suit with patch pockets and a guy in a blue pinstripe double-breasted suit with a power tie,
Hmm.
you're generating two different auras, and any person would look between those two and would say that's a businessman, that's an academic,
Hmm.
you know. And there's the functionality of these things combined with the artistic expression and the distinction is really what creates that kind of je ne sais quoi that I think a lot of guys are after, but
Hmm.
they try to immunize themselves from by not getting into style because I don't want to try too hard.
Well, and one of the things that's a bit of a shame is that, I mean, I think if you went back to, let's say, I see for me, ideally, like clothing in for my taste peaks between like the late teens to like the beginning of the 50s for men's clothing at least. And I really prefer personally like 30s and 40s. But you see in that time period, the average man would for sure know more about clothes than the average man today. Back then he would have. But one of the things was that even back then, the average man didn't actually have to know that much because he would have had a tailor who was an expert, and that he might have told the tailor, "Well, I want a suit like this," and the tailor would say, "No, you're not getting a suit like that. We're going to do it like this for you. Then you can pick between these things, right?" And there
Yeah,
was
yeah,
so
it was
much
kind of the pre.
knowledge. Someone could lead you through the process of what you needed, and you didn't. Let me pull it up. What did Jim said? I don't know what half these words mean, but I'm hiring Caleb as my personal stylist too. And so but
Let's
he
go.
shouldn't have to really know what a belted back on a suit is. You should just
Well,
be able
yeah.
to tell him this, do it this way, do it this way. What are you looking for? And then you can tell him.
Well, and that's one of the things I love about my job. I'm very anti the customer service mindset, which kind of
Hmm.
came out of the recent, I would say, 20, 30 years, this like customer worship, because it was very different. Like I said, this kind of time where there was a town tailor, where there was there were respected craftsmen in their fields, and average people could have access to them.
Hmm.
It wasn't like a niche, uh, you know, uh, specialty thing. It was just something you did, and I think that's more necessary than ever because you do go to like a regular retailer, and they will kiss your ass. They will, and if you don't know anything, you will set yourself up with something dumb. You'll show them a picture of Conor McGregor because you think Conor McGregor is cool, and they will make you look like shit because
Hmm.
they're getting paid either way, and their corporate initiative because they are corporate is to get you to spend your money with them. It's not as interpersonal. And I mean, this is just a broad rant on the whole consumer to craftsman world. In that, especially in something as intimate as tailoring, as expressive as tailoring, you do need somebody say that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
You saw John Wick. John Wick did look pretty cool. You know why John Wick looked pretty cool? Because it's a movie. He's a fictional character. If you got a super tight suit with no extra pleating, no extra seams that look painted on, one, I can't make it bulletproof. I was asked that many times when I was tailoring, and every young guy, especially ex-military guys, they were like, "Oh, can we get the bulletproof pad?" It's like, that's fiction. That was a prop. That's not real.
Yeah.
But then a lot of these guys, like they all want, like you said, it's like painted on things. They think it'll look so good. And it's like, no, you need someone honest who cares about what they do, who cares about you and is actually looking out for your best interest to say, no, what you need is something, if you're going to wear this suit every day, you need something that fits a little looser, something that breathes, something that is actually a little bit functional. And then I will use my expertise and discretion to put that together for you. You let me
Hmm.
know the needs you have, and I will put it together for you.
Hmm.
That and it's we used to joke about this in DC. We kind of called it fashion fascism in the sense that like I know what the people need. I know what you need. I will provide it for you. You have to trust my expertise. You have to trust my brilliance because this isn't a democracy here. You
Hmm.
don't know my world. You don't actually know what, the ins and outs and the details are. And if you do, you're going to start speaking the language with me and we're going to have a fun time. And, it's going to be
Yeah.
a different kind of thing. But the average person's like, I need a suit. I need a functional suit. I don't know much about style. I just know I want to look good. Tell me what you need and I'll make you look good. Just
Yeah.
leave it to me.
Hmm. Yeah. Carson Carlson says that sounds like his barber. He refused to give him a certain haircut because his hair wouldn't work for it. And that is true. That's a
Yeah,
good,
that's a
that's how
great
you know you
example.
have a good barber. Yeah. And Jim says that's a good barber. And then Taffy came after me. He said he wishes my barber would do that, which funnily enough, I don't have a barber. I go to Great Clips to save money. So that's why my haircuts are bad.
I've this great barber. His name is Clayton. He's a great guy. I've
Hmm.
had him since college, and this is one of the reasons my hair was long for a long time when I moved because I've always
Hmm.
said I'll cheat on 1,000 women. I'll never cheat on my barber though. I would be more plagued with guilt for cheating on my barber than
Yeah.
than cheating on anybody else. And the guy is great. He's like, so I'm gonna tape this based on along your occipital bones here because this is the way your skull is shaped. Like the guy knows what he's talking about. If I ask him about like why he does what he does, he can tell me exactly. And that's how I know I can trust him. And it's the
Hmm.
same thing with tailoring. One of the things I used to talk to a lot of my clients about was if they're asymmetrical or not. Because I've got levels, I've got shaping for the shoulders, and a big part of that was kind of breaking guys' hearts that you're a little asymmetrical. People are
Hmm.
just built different on their dominant side, especially if they're gooners, and versus their non-dominant side, and that's part of that tailoring thing. It's not a kind of thing you can get off the rack, and it's not something you can get from just some kind of careless employee that's trying to get paid.
Yeah.
It's about the care and the love of what you do, and it's, like I said, one of the biggest reasons my motto is I love what I do and I love who I do it for. If
Hmm.
I wanted to go be a ultra rich guy, I would have gone into different things, but I really love doing this. I
Hmm.
like making things for people, and I like the eye-opening experience is always my favorite thing, especially with the shoe world. Guys trying on their first like really nice pair of shoes, especially if it's
Hmm.
their really first nice pair, seeing something go from a picture of some skin to to a fitting to the finished product, seeing their eyes get all wide when they realize just what they've been missing out on it's the coolest thing in the world. It really is.
Yeah. All right. I'm asking this just because I owe it to him, but I don't know how much insight you'll have into this. Who's more stylish, the religious hippie or the war on beauty? And do you even know who those people are or
I
who those
know who
women
those people are. I don't realize that I didn't know they either posted their outfits. I'm not a big fan of religious hippie.
are? Hmm.
She strikes me. She's just kind of an e-girl. She's just kind of in this trad larp e-girl world, and she also like throws a fit about random things. I mean, what woman doesn't? But you know, um, what was the other one? War on Beauty. I've definitely reposted some things from War on Beauty before. Um, I would have to see their outfits. I'd have to see the fits. I don't actually follow outside of like a Skokie. I do
Hmm.
get a little inspo from a Skokie every now and again. I'm like, oh, that's a neat color combo. Wouldn't have thought of that. Outside of that, I really don't follow a lot of fashion people.
Hmm.
I probably should because I'm trying to get back more into making content soon. So I should really have some relevant things to talk about. But
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
really
See,
couldn't say.
does
But I'm going to say War on Beauty just because I know religious hippie, and also that name is gross. Anything hippie is gross to me, and
yeah.
anyone trying to inject hippie into anything that sounds good, to make a hippie version of it is just like I want a diet version of this because I'm a woman. So
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
so War on Beauty takes the dub by default.
Yeah. It's really interesting. She has I disagree with War on Beauty a lot. I'll just talk about it. Me and Taffy like to joke around and boost a lot of her stuff, and somewhat ironically, somewhat seriously. Sometimes she has really good stuff. She comes from like an art history perspective, and so sometimes she makes arguments and they're so horrible. But then she'll talk about stuff, and she really knows about art, and she does know about clothes. But then same thing, she'll wear stuff sometimes, and I'm like, what the hell are you wearing? So she's definitely better dressed than religious hippie. Religious hippie just dresses like a, like, you know, those memes like white girl Christian fall, like the pumpkin spice girls. She's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that vein of, I think she wears dresses instead of skinny jeans, which is better, but she's in that realm, and it's not great.
I had an ex fiance who was a religious hippie fan from time
Oh.
to time. She was a peaceful parenting reader and a religious hippie fan, and she didn't survive much long out of a year. It means she
Yeah.
left. It means she left. She's safe and sound. She left. When I
Mhm.
say she didn't survive out of a year, she didn't survive the neutron style. She's just fine.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I have a couple more structured questions instead of just letting it flow. So I have a
All
couple
right.
ideas for kind of well, I guess I'll give it a little bit of background. So in when Japan was modernizing in the 40s, one of the things that they and afterwards, after World War II, one of the things was that a lot of men were just completely unfamiliar with Western style, right? Like they didn't know how to wear a suit, they didn't know how to look nice. And so in Japan, one of the things that's well known is the fashion magazines, and they've stuck around to this day. But one of the things they're known for is defining styles. They would say, for example, there's a famous book written about it, but Ivy League style is this. If you want to dress Ivy League style, you must wear a blue blazer with golden buttons. It can't have blue buttons. It must have gold buttons. And funnily enough, it sounds like you said kind of the fascism. But funnily enough, that's actually, I think, for the average guy, kind of what they need. And so, one of the things is, what is your prescription if the average guy is going to ask you, what do I do for my first suit? What do I look for? I mean, not just brands, but kind of in general, colors, pieces, fit. I'm curious what your prescription is there. I definitely have a very specific idea of what I would tell someone, and I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, focus on the material. Focus on something that you can wear year round. Solid navy or charcoal. I think I would, especially if you're a younger guy, I would lean more towards navy.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, expression is expression. As far as style goes, something, if as long as your fabric is pretty conservative, you can have a little bit of fun. And that's a bit of a controversial take, but I love wide peak lapels. I'm obsessed with them. I think they're gorgeous. I think my ideal fursuit, if I could have one, if my whole wardrobe just evaporated tomorrow, I would want a navy blue suit with wide peak lapels. Um, I would do a ticket pocket with hacking pockets. Like I said, that's a little more expressive. I mean, regular besom, regular flat side pockets is fine. Don't go for patches. Patches are a little casual, especially for like a base suit. Um, Waistcoat would be cool. You don't need it, but it would be cool. Double breasted with a lapel would be even cooler. But like I said, not a medical requirement. And then as far as a pair of trousers go, ideally double pleated with a cuff, high waisted, medium to hole cut.
Yep.
Um, so that would be, like I said, if you can only have one suit or you need to get that first suit that's going to stand out in the best of ways while not also drawing excessive attention,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would do. It's like I said, it's about it's a bit of aura farming. No guy
Yeah.
doesn't want to aura farm,
Mm-hmm.
so it's about subtlety, and that would be the way to cultivate it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we're like the average guy that I would be talking to and that I'm thinking of, and oftentimes maybe I don't know, I'm sure you get a lot of guys coming to you maybe looking who have to buy stuff for work, but in my brain I think if a guy wants to wear a suit to church every single Sunday, what do I tell him? And I would say almost everything the same. I would say at least wide lapels, if not peak lapels. I think blue. One of the things I like about the vest I'm wearing and the whole suit that it's that the whole suit is that it's all the same color, but it has a pattern with movement in it, and so something, with your fabric, like you're saying, not like a completely uniform, but you can do something with like a woven pattern in it versus like a contrasting color or something like that.
Yeah, a bit of texture isn't the worst thing in the world.
Mhm.
I like herringbones a lot,
Yes.
especially for a more conservative thing. A tonal like Glen check isn't bad either, or a tonal stripe if you want to
Mhm.
have a little bit of fun. Um, you know, I do err on the side of conservatism when it comes to that kind of thing, as far as because I still want, universality.
Mhm.
I kind of had the opposite effect when I got into custom suiting. I went really nuts, balls to the wall, because I thought I could do whatever I want. I
Mhm.
kind of the NBA draft phenomenon of like, what is the craziest thing I can do?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then one of the things I would say to someone is that, one, spend money on your shirts, and like shirts are definitely worth it, but especially is to, you don't actually have to spend money on your ties, but it's to buy nice ties, because you can get nice ties for cheap. A million, they made a million nice ties back in the day, and so they're all still floating out there. You can find silk ties at thrift stores, you can find them online, and
Well,
then and I think that's definitely worth investing in as well.
well, absolutely, especially when it comes to ties. Um, patterns are good. I would say keep it relatively simple.
Hmm.
Avoid any ties that have like a combination of patterns,
Hmm.
because they're just ugly. Like if it's like a paisley on top of like a micro print, or like there's a stripe cutting into the paisleys, like avoid, find nice with a nice base color and a simple pattern, a relatively simple pattern. It could be paisley, it could be like a micro pattern, it could be like something kind of geometric like what you've got on there. Um, with ties, I would say less is more, but don't be afraid of like fun color combinations, especially if your suit's more conservative. You can have a little more fun with your tie.
Hmm.
But a great teller of good taste is not doing too much at once.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Oh, and one advice I would give is to not wear your Apple Watch or your Garmin or your whatever with your suit on Sunday. Take off your your
yeah, dude, where have you got to be? Where have you got to be? You're at Max. Like, where are you going? Like,
even if you just want to put it in your wife's purse, leave it in the truck. If you want to put it on as soon as you get back, whatever. But while you've got the whole thing on, it's not designed to have a 5 millimeter bump sitting there inside. Your sleeve is not designed to have a big old bump sitting inside of your sleeve, some rubber watch sitting there. I actually had to take mine off,
yeah.
put this on, so it was at the front of my mind. Um, Let me see. Okay, so uh, you, from your brand, offer some pretty unique options. I was looking, I had DM'd you on Instagram about possibly getting something made. It ended up not working for my timeline and my budget and everything for my wedding. I was looking at, you were doing those buffalo Oxfords, the buffalo hide. So I'm
Hmm.
curious if you want to kind of talk about your thought process behind the unique parts of what you design and kind of your ethos and everything behind that in the brand, because there's really a lot unique going on, especially from the footwear.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the biggest thing, when the non-compete hit and I couldn't make suits, and I had these very distinctive suit designs. Like, well, if I'm going to do shoes, I'm going to do the best, most interesting shoes. And ever since I was a kid, I've loved animals. I've loved nature. I've loved the kind of classical explorer aesthetic. So all my fictional, pardon me, all my favorite fictional characters are these kind of great explorers. Clayton from Tarzan. If you ever seen The Lost World, Roland Tembo, Robert Muldoon from Jurassic Park. These great big game hunters. And I've read countless writings from these guys like Henry Capstick. Um, these great stories. Teddy Roosevelt, a great example. And I really wanted to kind of bring that, because nobody's really talking about that. I'm really the only person stylistically that's really going into this kind of like colonial explorer look and feel,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to come with the clothing too. There's a lot of safari jackets planned, so get used to safari core in the summertime, guys.
Mm-hmm.
But But there's something so cool and distinctive about it that's been kind of lost in this age. Even in the right wing world, guys don't want to like be like, yeah, those guys, the great white hunter, the kind of archetype of the great white hunter with his elephant gun, you know, chopping through the bush to shoot a giant beast is somehow like bad or problematic. I have a lot of good right wing dudes that when I talk about elephant hunting and ivory hunting, like they
Hmm.
wince and they go, "Oh, well, that's it's an elephant, man." It's like, dude, these are like violent pest animals. These are pest animals that are the size of a city bus and can get homicidal. Like they're
Yeah.
not, I don't know what kind of weird documentaries you've been watching that makes you think they're sweethearts, but this isn't the wild thornberries, man. They can't talk and they will kill you if they want to. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the excitement of it. That's kind of the thrill of the adventure of, big game hunting, dangerous game. I mean, it's the whole thing of the knight slaying the dragon. The kind of ethos of somebody wanting to conquer this great piece of nature, not because they hate it, not because they want to destroy it, but because they want to have control, have dominion. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And that was kind of one of the attitudes that kind of came about it. And there is a love of nature in that. There is a love of stewardship and understanding of nature. And the greatest way to understand something is to bring it as close as possible. So there was a lot of that kind of mindset. It's a little hard to explain. It's a little, a bit of an odd point of view, but it is the kind of thing that drove me to starting to do that with, elephant skin. We were running some elephant skin loafers. Those are coming back. Elephant skin's coming back very soon. The Patreon exclusive is hunted Cape buffalo, which are the most feared animal in Africa. They kill a lot of people every year. They're very dangerous. We just did a limited edition run of 5 cuts of this one bull hippo that was
Hmm.
taken, and his tusks are actually in my study. His the bottom jaw ivory. It's 15 pounds of ivory, and we did some shoes and boots with those. And I mean, right now we're working mostly in South America. The new ones that are coming are from South America. We're doing anaconda, caiman, arapaima, which are these giant fish. You've probably seen them on if you
Hmm.
ever watch River Monsters. These big prehistoric-looking fish, stingrays. Um, but recently, as far as to go back to your Buffalo Oxfords, the real start of that inspiration was the embracement, and I think it's one of the things that a lot of guys kind of have to do is embrace the great nature of Manifest Destiny in America and just how awesome it was, the
Hmm.
exploration of the West, the conquest of the American continent. And to really capture that spirit, I wanted to create, I was already starting to work on this idea of the regalia Americana, this kind of unique image of American excellence and American elegance, this kind of American aristocracy and elegance that, England and a lot of Europe had. And I wanted to create 3 pairs, trilogy that would encapsulate that. And they all had to be made out of uniquely American animals. So the first one, like you said, they're all made out of hunted bison.
Hmm.
The William, named after Buffalo William Bill,
Hmm.
legendary bison hunter. And then there's the Vinoy, named after a very legendary deer hunter. It's a deerskin slipper. Deerskin's very soft, silky. It's very fine. That's the second one. And then there is the McElhenney, it's a monk strap made out of alligator. What's
Hmm.
interesting, a lot of people in your audience might have heard of McElhenney hot sauce. It's the same guy. In the 1890s, Mr. McElhenney, same guy that invented the McElhenney hot sauce, still holds the world record or the national record, because there's really nowhere else where alligators are, um, of the largest alligator ever shot. I believe he was 19 and a half foot, according to Mr. McElhenney. So that's where that name inspired came from. But it's this trilogy of uniquely American skins that are done in these very classical, timeless styles that really embrace that unique American elegance. If you're a politician and you want to show your nationalism, you want to show your American patriotism, you would want to wear bison skin. You want to kind of carry this unique element of the Americana with you. If you genuinely love America, if you're genuinely a patriot, you would kind of want this broader American image to be a part of your life. And when I created the Oxford, I wanted a simple, classical shoe design, and the uniqueness of it is in that it is made of bison. It's made of this animal that you can't find anywhere in America. That's an iconic image of the Americana. Same thing with
Mhm.
alligator, same thing with white-tailed deer. It is a unique thing that belongs solely to us as Americans.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I really liked was that a lot of the places that you're using unique materials or the times you're using the unique materials, because you do offer some more regular options as well. But
Well, yeah, the regular calf skin is always
Mhm.
there. We've got a pretty regular supply of crocodile skin. I mean, that's not particularly American. It's a little exotic, but there's a lot of big crocs out there.
But the at least one of the things I liked was with all the exotic skins, you were doing them on very classic, normal, like lasts, normal shapes. And so
Yeah.
because of that, one of the things you see, I'm just going to be honest, with a lot of like black guys, for example, or a lot of other styles, is that it's like a low cut like loafer with some crazy skin on it, or it's like some type of
Real
weird,
obnoxious pointy toe.
yeah,
And
super pointy toe with, or like a big square, like whatever it is, it's just something weird with a freaky with a freaky leather. And it's really jarring. And so the nice thing is that with a really classic Oxford and a unique leather, it really allows the leather to kind of be the star of the show. And so I really liked that looking at them. I'm definitely still interested in looking at those ones, although I really like some of that alligator you have.
the
um
McElhenney is a lot of fun. I would say one of my favorite designs that we've got out now. I mean, I love the Gustav, the crocodile loafer, and then I love the Mahamba. It's a Norwegian split toe derby,
mhm.
and the split toe is probably one of my favorite. It's kind of trending right now.
Yeah.
The split toe derby, but it really is one of my favorite designs. The simple panel look really shows off exotic skins well.
Mhm.
I'm working on actually a custom pair for myself, and I may release the model. I'll probably release the model for people to order, but it uses you've seen snapping turtles before, right?
Mhm.
So snapping turtles have this very dinosaur-like tail, very spiky. That can be tanned, and it makes for incredible leather. And the spines maintain their shape and structure.
Mhm.
So the top panel of that Norwegian split toe is snapping turtle spine going up, that spiky dinosaur dragon skin look, and then the rest is going to be this either I'm debating between using crocodile or like pebble grain moose leather for
Mhm.
the rest of it. Kind of a
Mhm.
unique, hardy piece. That's kind of a little sneak peek that your viewers are going to get as far as
Yeah.
something that's kind of in the lab, kind of being experimented with.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I have a big issue with a lot of shoes. I have really wide feet, and so for me, it's been really difficult wanting to buy a lot of the shoes because like there's a lot of nice makers. Like I was looking at like Carmina's, for example, and I really like some of their lasts, for example, but their wide is a D width. They don't offer an actual wide, let alone like a triple E. Like I need a triple E,
I've
and
done
so
one of my guys in he's in Finland or Norway somewhere. I do triple E's for him all the time. He was the first guy to get a pair of Williams, and I had to custom make him in a triple E. So that's
yeah.
no challenge for me at all.
So for your shaping, I know that for a lot of brands, especially when sometimes people will kind of come in and they'll use like a standard last. To what extent where are your lasts coming from? Are they kind of more standard lasts? Are you kind of tweaking them at all for a lot of the shapes and stuff? In a lot of the more heritage boot world, there's been a huge explosion in people buying boots from like Indonesian boot makers. And one of the things was that the Indonesian makers were buying Oxford or Derby lasts, and then they were putting boots on them, and they all looked terrible. They were trying to make engineer boots on Oxford lasts or on Derby
Oh,
lasts,
bro. Oh,
and they would
no.
have these terrible, like pair of engineer boots. I don't have any. Should have a sweep to them, and they would have this big bump where the lacing for the derbies was supposed to go, and just tons of terrible stuff. So you doing technically kind of custom, unique. What is your process for all of that?
So as far as the last goes,
Mhm.
I come from a very English school of thought. Um, as far as shaping goes, I like that more almond rounded shape. I
Hmm.
can do longer, more chisel shape, more dramatic stuff. I've done that for made to order, custom for clients before, so that's no stranger to me. But as
Hmm.
far as if you're getting something that you want to be kind of the sartorial brand, it does come from more English school of thought with the more rounded last. And I can tweak them, I can shape them, between the different bases. Um, I've done a few chisel toes for people,
Hmm.
per special request. And, at the end of the day, if you ask nicely, I can make just about anything happen. But um, but for the most part, it is a pretty standard kind of almond shaped rounded last. As far as sole goes, I tend to stick with a plain leather sole
Hmm.
with a kind of a teal patina on the bottom of it. The kind of motto was, if the soles aren't teal, they aren't real.
Hmm.
But I have also done stuff and like, recently a very famous, well, semi famous. He used to be very famous. Guy who was at a lot of Stop the Steal rallies, known as Purple Polo. He recently got a few pairs of mine, and naturally, I made the soles and the lining of the shoes purple for him because he
Hmm.
really likes the color purple. But uh, he's an old friend. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of it is customizable. A lot of it is, especially, it's easiest if you get on a call with me. If you order something and
Hmm.
you want to customize it or tweak it or something like that, shoot me an email, shoot me a customer message through the website, or shoot me an email, DM me on any social media. Let me know your order number, and I'll make it happen for you. I mean,
Hmm.
this, like I said, I love what I do. I love who I do it for, and I want to make things happen for people. I know a lot of people ask if I carry wides, extra wide, stuff like that, and I absolutely do.
Hmm.
Um, the thing is with like listing data on some of the website providers can be a little hard to list all the variants, because essentially you would have a whole separate web page of variants to scroll through and click on all these things. It'd be very overwhelming for your average customer.
Yeah.
So if you want to customize anything, seriously, if you're somebody watching, and obviously for you, my friend, if there's a particular customization or redesign you want to do with any of the base models, shoot me DM, let me know, and I'll make it happen.
Awesome. That's I'm glad to hear that. If I kind of want to leave people with a little bit of, we gave them the practical advice for what to look for a suit. I wonder, so besides your brand, where I think if I were to really tell someone what stands out from what I've seen from you so far, I'm really excited for those suits. You and I talked a little bit in publicly on X. You had included for some of your inspiration shots, one, a lot of fashion drawings, which are so beautiful, but then
Yeah, a
an
lot of
old
Lawrence
cart,
Fellows, yeah.
yeah, and then an old calf cart suit. And when I was deciding whether or not to buy the suit I'm wearing right now, or to buy or what else I was looking for, I was looking at the calf cart custom suits, and I ended up with the Thomas Farthing. But so I'm really excited for yours, but I'm curious for other people what advice you would give them for good brands to look for suits, for shirts, for shoes. What are some kind of options you think that people ought to keep their eyes out for? Some good people that you feel like you can kind of vouch for, or some good makers?
Oh, absolutely. If I could give a top three as far as suit brands go, I mean, you mentioned two of them. Cathcart, they have a great made-to-order program now, which is fairly new. They're, I've been buying stuff year after year from them, back especially when they were. All my jeans are from Cathcart. All the denim I've ever worn is from in the last like 10 years of my life has been from Cathcart. I love Simon James Cathcart. Their work is incredible. They're called Cathcart London now, so if you
Hmm.
search them, Cathcart London will be what you want to look for. Their suit designs are great. Their made-to-measure program's great. You're basically getting a suit out of the 30s, which is really cool. Um, Thomas Farthing, awesome work. Pretty good hatters too. They have some pretty good hat designs. I've got a few Farthing hats, and I put them up there with my Lock and Co hats. Like they're very good quality. Um, and then my number three is kind of a sleeper. A lot of people haven't heard of this guy, Chester Cordite. Cordite, like the stuff they use for mining detonations. Chester Cordite, he does some amazing stuff. The suit I wore to Fuente's rally, the black suit, there was an article, this journalist tried to take something said out of context. The suit I'm wearing when he took pictures of me there, that's a Chester Cordite. Very 30s golden age, whole cut, double pleated. inward-facing pleats, which you really don't see very much. The English style of pleating, you really don't see that much. They do it standard on all their trousers, which is really cool. Most of their stuff, they tend to go in and out of stock really quick because they do
Hmm.
small batch. So keep an eye out, but their designs are impeccable. Um, the website isn't like the most modern looking website, but that's kind of how you know it's going to be good.
Hmm.
Uh, um, so those would be my top three as far as suiting brands go, at least until this time next year when TR Sartorial is going to blow everything out of the water.
Yeah, there
And
you go.
yeah, if I had to throw up a fourth there, somebody's going to say, "Why didn't you say Ralph Lauren?" Yeah, Ralph Lifshitz, Ralph
Yeah.
Lauren. Sorry, had to. But yeah, it's not bad. Purple Label's not bad. What Ralph Lauren does, the aesthetic of Ralph Lauren is not bad. It's not
Hmm.
bad. And if you're looking for something more casual and fun, I do want to shout out the Rainments. He's kind of Connell Doyle. You know, he posts some good content. He's a fun
Hmm.
guy. He does his own clothing thing. Um, and one good custom tailor, if you're in Texas, Austin Roberts. Look up Austin Roberts. He's a good dude. But anyway, on to footwear. As far as footwear goes, I really have two. One of them's me. But the first one I would say were the kind of guys that mentored me. They were the guys that kind of mentored me in the shoe world and actually sponsored my live stream back in the day. They're very good friends. They're good guys. Uh, Jay Fitzpatrick, Justin Fitzpatrick is the guy that runs it, but Jay Fitzpatrick, he's a good dude. They make some incredible stuff. They do button boots. They do a lot of really great patina work. They were the ones that really got me into the patina world as far as that styling goes. And whenever I'm in New York, I go to their shop in Soho, and I sit around and kill a half a day with them.
Hmm.
But they're great guys. They have a great online website. They're always doing new designs every month. They're great guys. And then obviously, TR Sartorial, baby, always trying to do new stuff. Always making some interesting, cool, colorful designs. Really bringing some boldness, and that's not going to stop when we do suits either. I mean, I'm always looking for new species to add to the collection. I think it was what God came to know, and he said, bring me one of each animal, one for the left foot, and one for the right foot. So
Yeah, there
that
you go.
almost feels a little blasphemous. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be blasphemous, but look, you know, I could definitely get you a one of, as long as I can't bring anything illegal here. I got to be careful. If I have
Yeah.
one federal raid, I really don't want to get accused of smuggling rhino.
Yeah, there you go.
As much as I would
That's
love a rhino pair of boots. I mean, could you can we, President Trump, if you're hearing this, can we please legalize the import of rhinoceros so that I can get some rhino skin Chelsea boots?
yeah, that'd go
But
crazy. That would be
dude, it would
pretty
be
cool.
nuts. Could you imagine? But so yeah, as far as suits and shoes, as accessories go, I don't know, accessories are just kind of, you just kind of find them where you find them in my experience.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just find brands that do some prints well or do some quality well. I mean, most of my accessories that have really stood the test of time, I found at thrift stores by accident.
Mhm.
When it comes to accessories, accessories are such like, they're like trophies, they're like trinkets. They really come from a man's time just kind of going out in the world. When he goes to a city, maybe swing by, the near suit shop and see a pocket square you like or a tie you like and pick it up. And then hats can kind of be the same way. Whenever I go to a new city, I always try to buy a hat.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. The only thing I would say that we didn't really go over is that I think for a lot of guys who are either you're going to have a very specific style affectation, or for some guys who are really not prepared for the full size, the high waist, the full size legs, the wide lapels, looking into more Ivy League style stuff, more sack suit stuff, J Press, a lot of that kind of stuff. J Press is a good brand. Brooks Brothers has
Mhm.
gone downhill a lot, so you have to really be careful with Brooks Brothers, even though they're the name behind it. Those are good options as well. A couple guys in the chat were talking about how they like some Brooks Brothers stuff. There's a lot of those ones you kind of have to be careful. That's a good option too. I have honestly, I have a pair of Aldens, and Aldens have a good reputation, but I had an extreme factory defect, and then I wore them too much before I could return them. So I
Oh,
got really
bugger.
screwed by Alden. So I feel bad speaking well of them because it was. You know what? I realized this. I was so excited when I was buying them. I bought them when I was in Manhattan for a trip for my birthday when I turned 21, and they literally sold me them with 2 different shoelaces. So they sold me. I bought a pair of Shell Cordovan indie boots. Here, I'll just show you. They're right here.
Yeah.
So I have Shell Cordovan indie boots, and they have a waxed pair of laces and a regular pair of laces in a lighter color. And I didn't realize because I was so excited putting them on. I was like, how did the salesman not notice? And then if you also notice, there's like a roll in the toe here, but this is not like a natural roll because obviously the shell doesn't crease, but there's like a giant.
It looks structural.
Yeah, they put this is like a factory second. There's a issue with the toe. You can tell it's not there on this one, and it's a disappointing thing to spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes and have that big of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's.
So I can't speak well of Alden. They screwed me, but I like the way their stuff looks a lot. The indie boot is that is for a casual boot. There's probably that, or cowboy boots are probably like the two, and some types of engineer boots are probably for me like the most perfect casual boots you could wear. I love the indie boot.
Oh yeah, no, I've got a similar design. It's kind of that split toe design, called the Patterson, and it's like a suede. It's like a two-tone suede model, but it's similar in design, named after Colonel Patterson. But
yeah. I think that's everything. Yeah, Jim said true on Brooks Brothers. It's sad to see their fall. Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah, no, Brooks Brothers. I remember when I was like a freshman in college, and the mall in Nashville that I went to had a really cool Brooks Brothers store. It was one of the nicest stores I'd ever been to. It still had like all the wood everywhere, the globes on the tables and the palm trees. Like it felt like a nice kind of old country club like parlor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to it so many years later, and everything had been ripped out, remodeled. It's all gray now. It's all like carpet gray, flat walls, and it's like this is gross. Like, why would I spend this much money on this kind of a suit? It's not even made in America anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Brooks Brothers was known. It was the suit that Brooks Brothers made, the suit that Lincoln wore when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Was wearing when he died, and that's why they didn't make a black suit for like 100 years. And they started doing it again. It's like that's whether however you feel about Lincoln as a Southerner, I have my feelings, but regardless, that's kind of a distinctive element of that brand. And that brand, from what I've seen, like Brooks Brothers has started shedding more and more of its personality, more and more of its distinction to try to keep up and kind of blend in with mainstream like Men's Warehouse tier, more Suit Supply tier, middle of the road brands. And that's disappointing to see, because I think a lot of people who are really attracted to Brooks Brothers and their legacy are really driven away by that kind of hollowness.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Anyone who likes Brooks Brothers, J Press does everything Brooks Brothers does better. Slightly, and actually not that much more expensive. And the prices are much more reasonable. So you can check that out. I think that's about it. Where are the best places for people to find you and to check out your stuff? Jim, just so if you didn't notice, said that he bought a tie from you. So
let's go. Thank you, Jim. Let's freaking go. You love to see it. Make my day.
There you go. So what's the best place for people to find you?
Best place to find me is, well, I'm always giving some kind of take on @DripChud on Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it. TRSartorial.com is the best place to go. That is my business, my website. That's where you'll see everything happening. You can go to my Patreon, patreon.com/TRSartorial. There you can kind of get there's a few exclusive items you can only get if you're on the Patreon. You get exclusive access to some of my ideas, some of the designs, some sneak peeks. Soon I'll be posting, like I said, premiere pictures of the base suit design that'll be released next year. So you'll get exclusive access to that. We do some gaming, fun stuff like that. And obviously when the show comes out, there'll be some other privileges that come along with that. And I mean, right now, Instagram, TR_Sartor on Instagram. Those are really the big places that I'm posting. Having some new models very soon. getting in some more hippo. So if you ever want to wear the deadliest animal in Africa, you'll have that opportunity very soon.
Awesome. There you go. Well, thank you everyone for watching. It seemed from the comment section, it was pretty active and everyone seemed to like it a lot. Multiple times people said they really liked you as a guest. So maybe when you get released the suits, we'll have to have you back on and we can tell people how a suit's supposed to fit and you can show them on your own suit that you've made why your suits are so much better. That might be a good...
Hey, they're the best. They're the best.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Cheers.